Since the mid-19th century, most of the Western great powers start to colonize regions in Africa and Asia as a means of getting resources and projecting power. Most of the colonized regions start to struggle for independence after World War II. Today, we are going to focus on the country, Vietnam, and discuss how much did the Japanese occupation help drive decolonization in Vietnam. Firstly, let us talk about the colonial background of Vietnam. From 1884 to 1885, France obtained control in northern Vietnam over China in the Sino-French War, which Vietnam was one of the vassal states of China during the Qing dynasty. Later in 1887, French Indochina was established, which included regions of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia that had nothing to do with China and Indonesia. During the colonial era, French had opened schools, hospitals, and constructed better transport and communication systems in Vietnam. However, whatever economic progress made was just for French's own good and benefit a small range of wealthy Vietnamese. The governor of Vietnam, Paul Donner, even said, "Southeast Asia is the ideal colony. It has no end of raw materials and will serve as the perfect outlet for our factories' finished products." The exploitation of natural resources was serious due to the total political management was left to a series of governors, which encouraged self-interest and heavy-handedness. Therefore, the impact of French colonial ruling was considered as bad for Vietnam. We decided this as our research question because Vietnam is one of the most important countries in Southeast Asia, which used to be both Western powers and Japan's colony. As our research question is how much did the Japanese occupation help drive decolonization in Vietnam? It could let us know more about the situation and its historical information in Vietnam. Next, let us talk about the cause of anti-colonial struggle of Vietnam. Japan occupied Vietnam from September 1940 to August 1945. This had helped to drive decolonization in Vietnam mainly through indirect means. The Japanese occupation had shattered the myth of Western superiority. It aroused local solidarity and morale to strive for independence and increased the hope that Vietnam was able to separate from France's ruling. As the United States was seeking to restrict Japanese expansion, the Japanese occupation in Vietnam has brought along America's interest. The Vietnam resistance was supported by the United States advisors, the OSS agents, its return for information on Japanese troop numbers and movements. This boosted the local morale of the resistance as they had some hope that the United States may support their claim of independence after the war. By 1943, President Franklin Roosevelt was openly talking of Vietnamese independence. He said that French Indochina should be taken from France and put under the trusteeship.
There was a widespread famine during 1944, which the Japanese
were deeply involved of the cause. The communist resistance under Ho Chi Minh's leading, who is a communist and a revolutionary leader of Vietnam, encouraged the population to ransack a food store and warehouse and refused to pay the taxes. The effects of this rebellion were increasing popularity of Vietnam, one of the Vietnamese resistance groups, led by mainly communist leaders, as they recruited 100,000 members during this period and won support from the people. In 1945, the Japanese occupation forced to remove all power of the French in Vietnam, alleging they were assisting the Allies. This benefited Vietnam as now they could flourish without the power of the French troops. After the day of Japanese surrender on 15th of August 1945, the Japanese still kept French officials in prison and armed their former enemies, the Vietmen. Lack of French authority allowed the Vietmen to seize government office across the country. Most significantly, Vietnam was able to control northern Vietnam. Since Japan was unconditionally surrendered, the Japanese laid down the weapons and military equipment. Many leftover Japanese soldiers simply gravitated towards whatever employer was willing to hire them, which the Viet Minh wanted them to be the officers and as training cadres. 15,000 were still in the country by December 1946. Moreover, 600 Japanese soldiers even stayed behind to train Vietnamese troops. These all further helped Vietnam to win the First Indochina War. The French was unhappy with this new arrangement. They re-entered and tried to reoccupy French Indochina. Viet Minh, after brief negotiations with the French, who refused to acknowledge Vietnamese independence, the August Revolution began, resulting the breakout of the First Indochina War from the period of December 1946 to July 1954. As a result, Vietnam won the war.
Đúng như đã hẹn, các chiến sĩ Điện Biên Phủ trở về thủ đô giữa nghệ dân tộc Việt Nam, quyết đem tất cả tinh thần và lực lượng.
Thereafter, Ho Chi Minh declared the independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam on 26th of April to 20th of July in 1954. A peace conference was held in Geneva on 20th of July 1954, where Vietnam was divided into two parts, a communist North Vietnam and a Western aligned South Vietnam. The two parts were then unified during 1976, and that is another story. In conclusion, Japanese occupation breathed a new life into a Vietnamese independence movement and played a large part of driving decolonization in Vietnam. Last but not least, let us talk about our research progress. Before starting our research, firstly, we have to decide which Southeast Asian country we are going to focus on and think of a research question of that specific country. After decided our research question, we start our research by finding different kinds of sources in the internet, such as data and quotes. Also, we found some information in some history books. By using different methods to collect our information, rather than only using the internet, we used some primary source, such as some quotes by people at that time, to let our information more reliable. Although some of them are secondary sources, which means that the source was not created by the people at that period, they still gave some brief description about Vietnam to us. Throughout our research, we use the information in the internet the most because it is easier to find what we want by just clicking the mouse for a few times.